Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. In today's video, I will be doing a Scottish themed running session on my model railway. I've been wanting to do more running sessions for a while, and now that I have a bit of time to get some filmed, I thought I'd get onto it, so this will be the start of a bit of a new series. In these videos, I will not only be running trains, but I will also be giving brief history lessons on the locomotives I feature. I hope you enjoy this format, and please let me know how you feel about it in the comments. I hope you enjoy. In the 1890s, the Highland Railway was in need of some larger freight locomotives, so David Jones, the locomotive superintendent of the Highland Railway, was tasked with building a new locomotive. This locomotive ended up being the Highland Big Goods class, which was later reclassified as the Highland Class I in 1901 by Peter Drummond, and they were nicknamed the Big Goods after their builder later on. These mighty 460 locomotives were the first of their wheel arrangement in the United Kingdom, and as a result they had a tractive effort of 24,555 pounds, and performed so well that they were often called upon to pull passenger trains in the busy summers on the Highlands. "15 of these locomotives were built in total in 1894, and they were renumbered 103 to 117 by the Highland Railway. The locomotives eventually fell into ownership of the LMS in 1923, and the locomotives were renumbered 17916 to 17930. Many of them had very short working lives on the LMS, as in 1930 the first Jones Goods was withdrawn from service, and by 1940 they were all gone from traffic. Rather fortunately, number 103, the first of the class, and the same number as the model you see running, was set aside for preservation by the LMS in 1934. The locomotive went into BR ownership, and in 1959 it was steamed up again for rail tours, where it ran alongside other British Railways locomotives. It also starred in the film Those Magnificent Men and Their Flying Machines, before it was retired from steam in 1966. And being put in the Riverside Museum in Glasgow, Scotland. It is the only surviving locomotive of the Highland Railway. This model of 103 by Rapido is absolutely stunning. It has great detail as you would expect from Rapido, a die-cast boiler giving it decent weight, and it runs fairly well. I have it pulling a small train of Mark I's, similar to what it would have pulled during its rail tours in the 1960s. The Class 37, otherwise known as the English Electric Type 3, and nicknamed the Tractors because of the rumbling sound in their engines, were a fleet of 309 diesel locomotives built by English Electric at the Vulcan foundry. They were built from 1960 to 1965 as a part of the BR modernization plan, when it was decided that a larger and more powerful diesel was needed than what had already been built to replace the larger steam engines. They were built primarily for use along the West Highland Line in Scotland for hauling both freight and passengers, and for hauling passenger trains in East Anglia. While many of these did end up working these routes, they were so successful that additional members of the class were built, so many of these locomotives were seen hauling trains across Scotland, the northeast of England, and on the southern and western regions as well. After British Rail became privatized, they worked for many railways such as Colas Rail, EWS, DRS, and Harry Needlenose, and West Coast Railways. These locomotives are getting on in years now, but even so, 66 Class 37s are still in service, 35 have been preserved, and many of them are still working on heritage railways. The remainder, unfortunately, have been scrapped, though. The model you see here is made by Bachmann and is number 37401 and named Mary Queen of Scots. Even though it is a slightly older version of the model, it is still very nicely detailed and runs incredibly well. Bachmann sure do know how to make a good diesel. In 1934, the London and North Eastern Railway was in need of some large express passenger engines for managing the difficult route between Edinburgh and Aberdeen. Sir Nigel Gresley, the chief mechanical engineer of the LNER, was tasked with building a new class of locomotives, and what he built were massive 282 locomotives that weighed 110 pounds and had a tractive effort of 43,462 pounds. The first P2, number 2001 Cock of the North, was heavily based off of various French designs of locomotives. It featured rotary cam valve gear and a double blast pipe chimney. The rotary cam valve gear was applied to 2001 as an experiment, and it was found that the valve gear was far less durable than traditional style of valve gear, so in 1939 the locomotive was rebuilt with more traditional Walschaerts valve gear. 6 P2 locomotives were built in total by the LNER, and all of them were slightly different from each other, as Nigel Gresley has used the locomotives for experimenting. For example, number 2003 to 2006 were built all with a streamlined front, similar to the LNER A4s, and number 2001 and 2002 were later rebuilt to have the streamlined fronts as well. Despite the locomotives being relatively successful after their modification, they were all rebuilt in 1943 to 1944 by Edward Thompson into A2/2s. This was done due to Edward Thompson making many criticisms of the class, though many rail fans despise the A2/2s and think Thompson was just jealous of Gresley's work, and as it happened, the A2s had many problems of their own, and were very prone to wheel slipping, and they were not able to run the same route as the original P2 locomotives. With the modernization plan as well as the rather poor performance of the A2/2s, all of them were withdrawn between 1959 and 1961 and were later scrapped. None of the original P2s survive into preservation, nor do any original A2/2s, but a new build P2, number 2007 Prince of Wales, is currently being built by the A1 Locomotive Trust, the same group that built the new build Peppercorn A1 Tornado. The model you've seen running is the original P2, number 2001 Cock of the North. The model is made by Hornby and is in their railroad range, so it is not the most detailed, but it gives you a good idea of what these locomotives would have looked like when running, even if this model has a tendency to derail. I have it running with a train of mostly Pullman coaches, with one LNER teak on the front. Designed by Dougal Drummond, the Caledonian 264 class, otherwise known as the Pugs, were a class of 34 040 saddle tanks designed for use in dockyards and other goods yards. They were built between 1885 and 1908 at St. Rolloc's Works by Nelson and Company, eventually under the direction of John F. McIntosh when he became the chief mechanical engineer of the Caledonian Railway in 1895, and the later batch became known as the 611 class. These locos went into LMS ownership in 1923 and were classified as 0F, and many of them later went into British Railways ownership before the last was withdrawn by British Rails in 1962, although some went into private industrial ownership and lasted a little longer in service. Even so, none of these lovely tank engines survived the cutter's torch. The model I have running is a very basic version made by Hornby. It is more of a toy than a model, but it has been in Hornby train sets for many years, and is the main reason this class is so iconic and why basically everybody knows of them. I've been running this loco the entire running session so far at only 30% speed, simply because it is a bit of a pocket rocket, and if I run it at 50% speed, it looks like this. And if I run it at 80% speed, here's how fast it takes for it to do a lap of the layout. Absolutely ridiculous speed in this thing. And here, running at full speed, it throws itself off the rails. The North British Railway C-Class was a class of 168 060 tender engines designed by Matthew Holmes, locomotive superintendent of the NBR, or North British Railway. They were heavily based off earlier locomotives built by Dougal Drummond, someone who seems to have a habit of popping up in this video, which were almost identical, with the exception of the C-Class having larger boilers and were built for hauling goods trains across Scotland. During the First World War, 25 of these locos were sent to France to work for the Railway Operating Division, and after the war, they were sent back to Scotland and were named after battles and war generals of the First World War. In 1923, the locomotives fell into ownership of the LNER, where they were reclassified as J36 class, and many of them had tender cabs and snowplows ended under LNER ownership as well. In 1948, the LNER became a part of British Railways, and 123 J36s went into BR ownership. Numbers 65288 and 65345 were the final two members of the class to be withdrawn by British Railways on June 5, 1967, and they were the last two steam locomotives to run under BR ownership in Scotland. Almost every member of the class was scrapped, with the exception of number 673 Maud, named after General Frederick Stanley Maud from World War I. The locomotive is currently owned by the Scottish Railway Preservation Society and is awaiting its overhaul. The model you see here is of 722 in its LNER days. It is made by Hornby and is a stunning model, being extremely well detailed and being made almost entirely of metal, and it runs very smooth and is a great puller. Today I only have it pulling a small LNER themed goods train though. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. Please let me know in the comments if you like this style of video, as I may make more. That's all for today though, so thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.